Modern's newest creature-based combo is absolutely nuts, and you're going to be surprised during today's video as the power and resilience of this strategy will be on full display as we challenge for a 5-0 trophy. Let me present to you Samwise Squirrel Combo. This strategy is built off of two infinite combos, one of which generates infinite squirrels and the other which can drain and gain for infinite life. Each combo leverages food token synergies using two new legendary creatures, Samwise Gamgee, which generates a food every time a non-token creature enters the battlefield, and Rosie of South Lane, which puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature every time a food enters play. Both of these combos are easy to assemble as early as turn 3, with access to Collected Company, Court of Calling, and Ranger, Captain of Eos to find missing pieces. If it's still not clear how this works, worry not, because I'm going to show you both combos in our first match. Let's go nuts. Opening 7, can't keep this. We'll mulligan down to 6. 6, very unfortunate as well. Can't keep this. 5, not great, but we will keep this. We're going to send back the Woe Strider and a Court of Calling. Lead on Inverted Catacombs. We're going to fetch, Overgrown Tomb, Shock, Bird, pass turn. On with the basic planes into an Esper Sentinel. Happy to see it. Drew into a Ranger Captain. Play out a Cauldron Familiar and a Birds of Paradise. Opponent plays out their Urza Saga. Attack with the Sentinel. Interesting. We'll block with a Cauldron Familiar. Happy to trade. 2 mana Stoneforge, Colossus Hammer. We're looking for a land here, and we found it. We'll shock. Play out our Ranger Captain. Trigger. We're going to get a Viscera Seer. Not casting the Viscera Seer is no mistake. In this instance, we need a creature to trigger Samwise when it enters play so that we can make a food and start our loop. Back to us. Drew into a Collected Company. We're just going to pass right back to our opponent. Saga up to 3. Opponent's going to add a mana with that. Trying to set up the kill for next turn here. Colossus Hammer enters play. I'm actually going to respond to this. We're going to Court for 2 right now with the second Saga trigger on the stack. We're going to get our Samwise. I'm going to sacrifice the Ranger Captain, cut them off from casting any other non-creatures. Ornithopter equips, another Saga, make a construct. Swing for 10, we'll take it. Down to 6. Untap. Drew a land. Play out our Viscera Seer. Trigger Samwise. We're going to play out our Heath. We'll fetch, go down to 5. Get a basic plains. And we have an infinite combo here. We can sacrifice the food to return Cauldron Familiar from the graveyard to play, draining and gaining 1 life. When the Familiar enters play, Samwise will trigger, making a food. We can then sacrifice our Familiar to the Viscera Seer, putting the cat back in the graveyard, and then repeat this process 18 more times until we have lethal. Alright, our opponent scoops. Thank you, opponent. Hand would be great if we had a land or 2, but we don't. Mulligan down to 6. 6 is acceptable. We'll keep. We'll get rid of the Scurry Oak. Opponent leads on a Saga, Ornithopter, Springleaf, Pithing Needle, naming Cauldron Familiar. Drew a Ranger Captain. We'll lead Verdant Catacombs, fetch. We're going to shock in Overgrown Tomb, and we're going to push this Ornithopter so they can't make a Saga token. Saga goes up to 2, basic plains, nothing else. Drew another Verdant Catacombs. Play that out, fetch, Temple Garden, shock it in. A little bit of a mistake with my mana sequencing. Play out Samwise, back to my opponent. Saga goes up to 3, add a mana, get a Gingerbrute, tap for mana, forge anew into play. No equipment as of right now. Draw into a basic swamp, play out our Windswept Heath, fetch, basic plains, Ranger Captain, make a token with Samwise. We're gonna get ourselves a Haywire Might, make a food, crack for 2, back to our opponent. Ornithopter, Colossus Hammer, Gingerbrute is unblockable. Hammer equips, hit for 11, we're down at 2. Untap. Drew into a Razor Verge Thicket. Lead off with an attack for 2. Cauldron Familiar. We'll gain 1 off that. Make another food. Haywire Might. Another food. And we're going to Might down the Hammer now, just in case there's a Surge of Salvation. Play out the Thicket. Pass turn. Opponent plays out an Esper Sentinel. We'll let that hit. Attack with the Gingerbrute. Make it unblockable. We'll go down to 4. Untap. Drew a Court of Calling. Play out a Swamp. We're going to lead on the Collected Company. I'm not going to pay 1 for the Sentinel. We'll let them draw a card. I'm going to get Scurry Oak and Woe Strider with triggers on the stack. I'm going to Court for 3 and put a Rosie into play. When Rosie enters the battlefield, she'll make a food. This triggers her second ability to put a 1/1 counter on the Scurry Oak. When the counter is put on the oak, this makes a squirrel, which triggers Rosie once more. This process will then repeat infinite times to make infinite squirrels. Opponent's turn. I'm going to sacrifice my Ranger Captain. 51 squirrels. Our opponent scoops. Opening 7, we can keep this. Opponent on a 7-card hand, we're going to lead off Verdant Catacombs, fetch, Shocking Overgrown Tomb, Cauldron Familiar, drain 1, gain 1. Opponent with the Wooded Foothills, fetch, Basic Mountain, Lava Spike, playing against Burn. Second Ranger Captain, that'll Windswept Heath, we're going to pass turn back. Opponent with the Basic Mountain, we'll fetch end of turn down to 14. Get a Temple Garden tapped, drew into a Samwise, not bad. We're going to cast out a Ranger Captain, yield, get ourselves a Viscera Seer. Opponent with Boros Charm, we're down to 10. Nothing else from our opponent. Draw for turn, another Cauldron Familiar. We'll start by sacrificing our Ranger Captain, play a Samwise, play a Viscera Seer, make a food, sacrifice our Familiar. Familiar back, sacrifice a food, and we have a loop. Opponent scoops, up a game. We'll keep our 7. I believe this opening 7 is a turn 3. Infinite Squirrels, we'll see. Drew a Samwise, lead on Bird. Opponent with the Wooded Foothills, fetch Basic Mountain, Bird is dead, down to 17. Drew a Haywire Might, not bad. And fetch Basic Forest. Wall Roots, Haywire Might. Opponent with Sunbaked Canyon, Lava Spike. Back to us. Okay, so we have a combo here, but we're a mana short of pulling it all off. We're going to lean on our Rosie Cotton, create a food, and we're going to pump our Wall of Roots. No attacks, we'll pass the turn back. Opponent with the Boros Charm, we're down to 9 life. Opponent with the Inspiring Vantage, and we're actually just going to hang tight here. With our deck being able to generate food and gain 3 to 6 life at will, we're just going to sit back and bide our time. Lava Spike, we're down to 6. We're going to Court of Calling end of turn for 1. We'll get a Cauldron Familiar. Food's going to come into play. It's going to trigger Rosie. We put a counter on Samwise. Cauldron's going to trigger, put our opponent down 1. We'll gain 1. We'll untap. Another Wall of Roots. We're just stockpiling food tokens at this point. From here, we can attack with the team, play out a Wall of Roots, make another food, put another counter on Samwise. Opponent with the Boros Charm, we're going to respond to that. We'll eat a food, down to 6 life. Untap, we have an Overgrown Tomb in hand. Play out a Scavenging Ooze, make a food, trigger, counter on our Samwise. Opponent's down to 3, Tomb tapped. Back to our opponent, Skull Crack. We'll respond to that. Sacrifice food, we'll gain a life. Sacrifice another food, we'll gain 3 more life. Opponent scoops in response. Opening 7 on the play looks excellent, we'll keep it. Take it into a Bird. Opponent Misty Rainforest, cycle a Street Wraith. Looks like Living End. One tap, we drew into a Hierarch, not terrible. We'll fetch with our Catacomb to start out. Get an Overgrown Tomb, we'll shock. Cauldron Familiar, drain 1, gain 1. Noble Hierarch, we'll attack for 1, trigger Exalted, put our opponent down to 16. They fetch end of turn, Basic Island, cycle a Generous Ent, and get a Stomping Ground. Untap, Grief, exiling an Architect of Will, targeting me. They get rid of the Cocoa, Grief to the graveyard, Basic Forest into play. Back to our turn. As is often the case in game losses against Living End, I was unable to find disruption in the form of Ranger, Captain of Eos, or assemble my combo before their monsters were reanimated. We're down a game. Opening 7's a little weak, we'll mulligan this. 6, we have our combo, it's not great, but we'll keep it, and we'll put a Rosie on the bottom. Opponent's on a mulligan to 6, lead Overgrown Tomb, shock, Bird, pass to our opponent. Adawara, back to us. Drew an Endurance, really, really good. We're going to fetch. We get a Basic Plains here. Play out our Scurry Oak, pass turn back to our opponent. Opponent cycles a Curator. They untap, they grief us, discarding a grief. See what they choose here. Choose the Endurance, which either means they have a bounce spell or they messed up. The only 2 cards that make sense based on my opponent's play are Dead Gone and Subtlety, but neither are likely in this instance. Drew a Ranger Captain. I think we're just going to go for the win here. Play out Rosie Cotton, triggers. Make a food. Food triggers, we're going to target our Scurry Oak. So this is going to trigger infinite times, and then we're going to attack in with our Scurry Oak for the kill. We made about 30 squirrels and our opponent scooped. Opening 7 looks great, we'll keep it. Opponent's on a mold of 5. Botanical Sanctum, past us. We're going to lead Windswept Heath, fetch. I'm just going to get a basic here into a Bird. Opponent cycles an Elephant, gets a Steam Vents. Steam Vents into play. Tapped. Back to us, well untap. Drew a Ranger Captain. Leading with the Ranger Captain and having Endurance and Scavenging Ooze as backup proved to be too much hate for my opponent to fight through. Drawing a second Ranger gave me extra insulation, and my opponent decided that they had had enough. 3-0. We're on the play, opening 7 looks excellent, we'll keep it. I'm going to lead Overgrown Tomb, we will shock, play out a Bird, pass turn. Opponent leads with a Blood Crypt, they shock, Grief, looks like we're getting scammed. Take our Ranger Captain, Undying Malice, Grief's coming back. They take our Woe Strider. Interesting choices. Drew another Bird. I think we'll play out our Wall of Roots into our other Bird. Pass turn back. Opponent swings for 4, we're just going to take that. They have no follow-up play. Back to us. Drew a Windswept Heath. We'll play that out, and we'll play out our Scurry Oak as well. Looks like our Oak is getting bolted down. Opponent fetches, end of turn. Blood Crypt tapped. Polluted Delta, a fetch into a Pyromancer. Blood Moon and Bloodstained Mire go to the graveyard. 2 fresh cards into the hand. Crack for 4. We're down to 10. We're going to fetch, get ourselves a basic here. Basic Forest. Drew into a Chord of Calling. I think we just hold this chord for now. Opponent Bloodstained Mire, they fetch. They play out another Grief. We're going to let this trigger. We're going to chord for 3. I think we're going to get Rosie Cotton. Makes a food, triggers. Puts a 1/1 counter on our Wall of Roots here. Swing for 6, we'll take 4, we'll go down to 5. Scam is usually a terrible matchup for creature-based decks, but because of the amount of life gain and the presence of value-based cards like Woe Strider, Collected Company, and Ranger Captain of Eos, this deck seems to be more resilient to Scam's hateful strategy. When it swings with the Voidwalker, take a hit for 3. We're going to sacrifice a food, gain some life, untap. Add a mana with the bird, sacrifice it to the Woe Strider, let's scry 1. Put that on the bottom. Sacrifice food, we'll gain some life. Draw for turn. Samwise, not bad. Play it out. Pass turn back. Put him with attack for 3. Nothing else. Back to us. Upkeep, we're going to add a mana with the bird. Sacrifice it to the Woe Strider. And that's the card we're looking for. We're going to pass back to our opponent. Opponent attacks with the team. They have 3 cards in hand. We're going to chord for 3 in response. Get our Scurry Oak. Scurry Oak's going to trigger Samwise. Samwise is going to make a token. Put a counter on the Scurry Oak. Our opponent scoops. We're up a game. Opening 7's a little slow, but has a ton of value. We're going to keep it. Opponent leads off with a Polluted Delta. They fetch. Blood Crypt Shock. Ragavan. Could be problematic. And it was, as often can be the case when a Ragavan goes unchecked, things can quickly get out of hand. A rather uneventful game where the monkey went coast to coast. We're going to take a hit for 6, going down to 2. Kolaghan's Command does the job. Alright, game 3 on the play. Opening 7 is acceptable. We'll keep it. Opponent's on a mulligan to 6. Start Verdant Catacombs. We're going to fetch basic. Birds of Paradise. Blackleaf Cliffs for our opponent into a Thoughtseize. And they take the Endurance. Interesting. Untap. Drew another land. Pretty good. Godless Shrine. We're going to shock. We'll play out our Woe Strider here. Make sure we get some value. Opponent Bloodstained Mire. Another Thoughtseize. Guess they're taking our Coco here. They fetch. Snow-covered Swamp. This feels like a Fury plus Undying. This is very unfortunate. We'll sacrifice our goat to start with. We're going to look at the top card. It's another land. We'll put that to the bottom. We're going to sacrifice our bird. We'll look at our top card. It's an Endurance. I think we'll put that on top. All right, Fury's back in play. They have 1 card in hand. Untap. We'll play out our land into our Samwise, and we'll pass the turn. The plan from this point forward is to stall the board and gain life with the food tokens that Samwise generated until we can escape the Woe Strider from our graveyard and start to fix our draw steps with its scry ability. Keep our Samwise in play. Untap. Drew into a Ranger Captain. Not bad. Ranger Captain gets us a Cauldron Familiar. I think we're just going to get the Viscera Seer. We'll play that out. See if we can stabilize. That would be crazy. Make another food. We're going to swing for 2. Attack with the Fury. We're going to block with the Viscera Seer. And we'll sacrifice it to scry. Chord of Calling on top. I think we want that. We'll keep that. The fact that my opponent did not attack with their Voidwalker to me says they have an Undying spell. So we're going to play around that. They do nothing. Interesting. Cast a Thoughtseize. We're going to respond to that. So here I think I'm actually going to get a Woe Strider. Thoughtseize has no targets. Opponent moves to combat. Just the Fury. We're going to block with our goat. We'll sacrifice the goat. We'll scry 1. We'll keep that on top. Untap. Play out our Verdant Catacombs. We're going to fetch basic here. Get a Swamp. Bring back another Woe Strider. Samwise will make another food. Alright. Got some insulation here. Opponent draws a Castle Lockthwain. Plays it out. Still attacking with the Fury. Very interesting. We'll block. Sacrifice it to the goat. We'll look at the top card. Another Ranger Captain. We'll put that on top. Opponent sacrifices the Voidwalker. Let's see what they're getting here. A Viscera Seer. Okay. Okay, yeah, this is pretty good. Feign Death on their Fury. Fury's going to come back. Maybe I should have played around this. See where they're targeting. Samwise and Woe Strider. 3 mana Seasoned Pyromancer. Really, really good. When they scried earlier, they put a card to the bottom. Okay, so from here, if they don't block the Woe Strider, they will just lose. So we're going to swing with both. Yeah, we're going to let that happen. I think we have lethal from here. We're going to cast our Ranger Captain. Our opponent scoops. 4-0. Roll the marbles, the 5-0. Unfortunately, opening 7 we can't keep, and we're on the draw. 6 is slow, but we'll keep it. And I think we're going to get rid of a land. Opponent's also on a 6-card hand. They lead off on a halfling. Drew another land. We'll play out a land, pass the turn. Windswept Heath. Attack for 1. We'll fetch end of turn. Temple Garden into play. Untap. Another Samwise. We'll fetch Basic Forest into a Wall of Roots. Opponent with a Triome tapped. They untap. Misty Rainforest, second halfling. No attacks. Good for us. Untap. Drew a Rosie Cotton. Pretty good. We'll play out Verdant Catacombs. Pass turn back. Opponent fetches. Another Triumph tapped, and they untap. 4 cards in hand. Misty Rainforest. 5 mana Elish Norn. That one is problematic. I don't know if we can actually beat that. We're going to need a very good Coco right now. We'll get double Ranger Captain. I think we're going to get a Viscera Seer and a Noble Hierarch. Unfortunately, I don't think we can win through this card. This initial build was not constructed with Elish Norn in mind, and for this reason, we are dead in the water to this Resolved Praetor this game and the next, losing our 5-0. It makes sense that future builds would include at least 2 copies of Grist the Hunger Tide in the 75, along with a singleton copy of Giant Killer, a tutorable option with Ranger Captain of Eos. Despite this anticlimactic finish, this deck definitely has promise. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I will see you all again very soon. You know the deal, everybody. Be well.